Let's talk about empowerment. What is it, and what does it truly mean to be liberated? As a Muslim woman, I feel completely liberated. My worth isn't defined by my appearance or by how much attention I attract. My strength is not measured by visibility or the trends that I follow, but by my desire to live a life of integrity, of compassion, and through contributing to society, whether or not I am being seen. In chapter 33, verse 36 of the Holy Quran, it instructs men and women to guard their chastity. But what does chastity mean today? It seems countercultural because our modern culture is telling a different story. We're told that freedom is defined by how much attention our behavior commands, or by how much skin we reveal, rather than by our inner dignity or self-worth. We seek validation from others rather than ourselves. And behind this polished narrative lies a carefully marketed illusion with a much darker truth. To unpack this, we spoke with Dr. Ellie Hansen, a clinical psychologist and researcher. Her work spans the prevention of abuse and trauma and critiques the harmful societal systems.
So when we talk about sexual objectification, what we mean is somebody being valued primarily for how they look, their physical, sexual appeal. That is the focus. And the rest of who they are as a person is not being given too much attention or value. We're fundamentally not seeing them as fully human. And what research finds is that when somebody is being sexually objectified, people tend to see that person as less warm, as less intelligent, as less competent, as less moral, less deserving of moral treatment, and indeed less capable of feeling pain. And we can see how each one of these things is a step towards their maltreatment, and then also being disempowered in society. So to give you an example of an experiment, in one study, participants were looking at different photos of people and of objects, and were asked to classify them as either a person or an object. They could do this quite easily. When the photos were of sexually objectified women, measuring their movement on the computer mouse showed a categorization conflict. So they experienced a subconscious conflict in categorizing this photo as person or object, a conflict that we don't see when they're looking at a photo of an average person. When people, particularly women and girls, are sexually objectified, that can then lead to increased sexual violence towards them, as well as increased tolerance of that violence by bystanders, and indeed by women and girls themselves.
According to the UK's National Audit Office, there was a staggering 264% increase in police-recorded violent offences against women and girls between 2009 and 2024. In the UK, the numbers tell a devastating story. According to the All-Party Parliamentary Group report for UN Women, 86% of young women aged 18 to 24 report harassment in public spaces. And for women of all ages, it's a shocking 71%. And women under 35 are 3 times more likely to face online abuse. On Instagram alone, 90% of abuse reports go unanswered. And in UK schools, 9 out of 10 girls say that they have been harassed. Many were sent unsolicited explicit images. This is becoming routine, and it's an unfortunate reality of exploitation that is somehow sold to us as empowerment. And at the heart of this issue is a normalization of the objectification and exploitation of women online, fueled by distorted ideas of empowerment and a troubling lack of effective digital safeguards to protect vulnerable users. To understand the deeper human impact of this, we sat down with someone who's been on the front lines for nearly 2 decades. Christine Sharif, a qualified independent sexual violence advisor.
The objectification of women in the media, it doesn't create abusers, but it certainly gives a cultural context in which that can further develop and gets reinforced. It reinforces messages about gender inequality, relationship, that sense of entitlement and control, all factors that come together to make the ingredients that instigates violence against women and girls. It can justify abusers seeing women as possessions or objects to dominate, their commodities, rather than equal partners. It also desensitizes violence and coercion.
This culture of objectification isn't just a social phenomenon, it's an industry. A study of nearly 2,000 magazine ads found that more than half focused on girls' physical appearance. In men's magazines, 75% of women's images emphasize looks alone, because appearance drives engagement and engagement drives revenue. And at the same time, indecent objectification has exploded, especially online. A 2022 internal study at Twitter, now X, estimated that 13% of its content was explicit. And Instagram's own research revealed that 20% of 13 to 15-year-olds, they encountered indecent content in a single week, and 13% received unsolicited advances.
There's many people to blame for sexual objectification. A huge part of the responsibility lies at the feet of the corporations that have driven sexual objectification, that have amplified it in the service of their own profits. Companies that use an objectified woman in order to sell their products. So there's a large part of the blame with them, but also with. I wouldn't want what we're saying to play into a blame of women and girls. They are very much on the receiving end of this, and need to be given other options. Fundamentally, need to grow up in a culture that values every part of who they are and teaches them that core self-worth. Sexual objectification is absolutely the opposite of female liberation and empowerment.
And it's not just commercial, it's political, it's legislated. The French hijab ban enacted in 2011 prohibited the wearing of the niqab and other religious symbols in certain public settings. Under the guise of secularism, the ban restricted women's choices to cover. Unless they conformed to Western norms of exposure, they were excluded from schools, sports fields, and public life. Now, modesty challenges a system built on physical exposure. A woman choosing to cover is deeply unsettling to a culture that measures worth by appearance, and so modest attire is miscast as oppression. They speak of liberation and freedom in a world that would often seem to define it for us. But from where I stand, as a Muslim woman, I can tell you this: I am already perfectly liberated and free. I have never, not once, felt judged or confined or devalued, limited in my own growth, or weak because of the principles that I choose to follow or how I choose to present myself to the world, fostering a profound sense of self-worth that is independent of external validation.